A war camp built on ice somehow learned to laugh again, hours before an empire arrived to erase it. And the reason wasn't a weapon or a miracle, it was a freezing human nurse who wouldn't stop saving the enemy. Where are you watching from? And will you subscribe to help this channel grow? The story begins now. The silence hurt more than the gunfire ever had. Kael'var stood at the edge of the observation platform, watching snow fall over a camp that had forgotten how to live. 300 soldiers moved through their routines like ghosts in armor, maintaining weapons they no longer fired, eating rations they no longer tasted. The war on Varthal had not ended. It had simply frozen. He was their warlord. The title felt heavier each morning. Below, a young Zorathi named Rex cleaned plasma rifles with mechanical precision. The soldier had not spoken in 6 months, not since the orbital strike that took his entire unit. Kael had stopped trying to reach him. What words existed for this kind of emptiness? The wind changed. Kael's scales prickled beneath his bone armor. Something was coming. The storm hit with the fury of a dying star, whipping metal debris across the compound. Alarms shrieked. Sentries scattered. Through the white chaos, Kael saw it. A medical pod tumbling end over end, shredded hull trailing sparks and frozen blood. It crashed into the southern barrier with a sound like breaking bones. Torzan materialized beside him, the military advisor's golden eyes cold as the planet itself. His voice carried the weight of doctrine. Leave it. Scavengers will freeze before morning. But Kael was already moving. They found her in the wreckage, small and impossibly fragile against the twisted metal. Human, female, 20-something cycles if he guessed their aging right. Her hands were torn, frost forming in her dark hair, life signs barely registering on the scanner. She should have been dead. Tor raised his sidearm. Mercy, Commander. Quick and clean. Kael opened his mouth to agree. The words died. The human was moving, not convulsing, moving with purpose. Her frozen fingers pressed against the chest of a Zorathi corpse half buried in debris, doing compressions with hands that should not have been able to feel anything. Her lips moved in the delirium of hypothermia. Don't die, big guy. Don't die. Please. She was trying to save their enemy with her last conscious moments in sub-zero hell. For no reason that made tactical sense. Kael had killed 1,000 enemies. He had never seen one do this. The woman's eyes rolled back. Her hand fell away from the dead soldier's chest. The wind howled. Tor's weapon hummed, charged and ready. Kael knocked it aside. Take her to medical, he ordered, his voice rough with something he could not name. Keep her alive. Tor's expression froze into something between shock and disgust. Commander, the doctrine clearly states that I am the doctrine here. Move. 4 soldiers lifted the human with surprising gentleness. As they carried her past, Kael noticed something clutched in her frostbitten hand. A patch, Terran Medical Corps. The stitching read, We patch the line. Rex watched from the shadows, silent as always, golden eyes tracking the procession. Kael returned to his quarters that night but did not sleep. He kept seeing those frozen fingers doing compressions on a corpse, kept hearing words whispered in delirium. Don't die. Please. Outside, the storm buried the wreckage deeper. Inside, something in the camp had shifted. Kael stood at his window, bone armor still locked in place, and wondered what kind of creature cared for its enemies while freezing to death. What kind of creature refused to stop caring, even when caring was suicide. In the medical tent, monitors beeped steadily. The human's core temperature climbed 1 agonizing degree at a time. A medic noted her vitals in the log, hesitated, then added a line that would later be erased. Subject mumbled repeatedly during treatment. Keep them warm. Just keep them warm. The next morning, Kael gave the order. Let her live. For now. Tor did not argue, but his eyes promised that doctrine would not be denied forever. High above, satellites recorded the storm's retreat. In the wreckage of the medical pod, frozen blood had formed strange patterns. Later, analysts would note they resembled 2 hands clasped together. But that would come later. For now, in a camp where silence hurt more than bullets, a human woman dreamed of warmth she could not feel, and 300 soldiers waited without knowing what they were waiting for. Elise Rowe woke to the smell of iron and antiseptic. Her body inventory came automatically. Fingers, mostly there. Toes, probably attached. Core temperature, no longer homicidal. Situation, spectacularly screwed. She opened her eyes to a ceiling made of scavenged hull plating and prayer. Not Terran construction, not human voices in the corridor. The air tasted wrong, metallic with an edge of sulfur. Elise turned her head. Pain sparked down her neck. 7 feet of scaled muscle sat beside her cot, golden eyes fixed on her face with the intensity of a predator deciding if prey was worth the calorie expenditure. Humanoid mostly, skin like tarnished bronze armor, small fangs visible when he breathed, hands that could probably crush her skull without much effort. She should have been terrified. Instead, she was annoyed. "You are alive by my will," the alien said. His voice carried the gravel of distant thunder. Elise noted the translator node on his collar, flickering slightly out of sync. She licked cracked lips. Her throat felt like sandpaper soaked in regret. "Then your will," she rasped, "needs coffee?" Silence. Absolute. Crushing. Then from the corridor, an impossible sound. Laughter, rough and rusty, like machinery remembering how to function. 2 guards outside her door were making a noise somewhere between a cough and a hiccup. The alien warlord stared at her. Elise stared back. "What are you?" he demanded. "Severely dehydrated," she replied. "Also a nurse. Where am I?" "My camp. My command. My planet until the diplomats remember we exist." "Cool." She tried to sit up. Her body disagreed violently. She compromised at 45 degrees. "So are you going to kill me, or can I get some water first?" The warlord stood. Even seated, Elise had to tilt her head back to track him. He moved to a supply locker, withdrew a canteen, and placed it within reach. Not gently, not roughly, efficiently. "Drink. You have value as a hostage." Elise drank. The water tasted like metal and mercy. "When you say hostage, do I get the premium package or basic?" Another hiccup cough from the corridor. The warlord's eyes narrowed. "You laugh. Humans should not laugh when captured." Elise wiped her mouth. "Buddy, if I didn't laugh, I'd be crying. And crying doesn't fix broken bones." She glanced around the medical tent. "Speaking of which, who's running this operation? Because I see at least 3 suboptimal patient placements from here." The warlord, Kale, she would learn later, studied her with the focus of someone encountering a new species of dangerous insect. "You are injured. You should rest." "I've had worse hangovers." Elise swung her legs off the cot. Her vision swam. She gripped the frame until the world stopped spinning. "Look, I'm going to level with you. I crashed. I survived. I'm in enemy territory. But I'm also a trauma nurse, and those soldiers out there sound like they're breathing wrong. So either shoot me or let me work." Kale did not move for a long moment. Then he turned and left without another word. Elise took that as permission. 3 hours later, Kale returned to find his camp transformed. The human had somehow convinced his guards to let her access the medical stores. She had reorganized the entire supply chain, improvised fever reducers from local flora, and was currently teaching a squad of bewildered soldiers how to properly dress plasma burns. She moved through his warriors like she belonged there, small and determined, leaving trails of bandages and hope. One soldier attempted a Zarathi gratitude gesture, pressing his fist to his chest. Elise mimicked it perfectly, then added a thumbs up. The soldier made that hiccup cough sound again. Kale realized with growing horror that it was laughter. His soldiers. Laughing. When had they last done that? Torzan appeared at his elbow, face carved from disapproval. "This is dangerous, Commander. She disrupts order." "She reduces infection rates," Kale replied, surprising himself. "She makes them soft. She makes them functional." Tor's silence was a weapon. Kale felt its edge. That evening, Elise collapsed back onto her cot. exhausted and satisfied. Rex, the mute soldier, sat in the corner. He had been watching her all day, silent and careful. Elise offered a tired smile. "Hey, Echo." Her nickname for him felt natural. "You don't have to guard me. I'm not going anywhere." Rex did not speak, but he did not leave either. Outside, Kale stood in the snow and tried to understand what was happening to his command. In 3 days, the human had reduced fever rates, prevented 2 amputations, and somehow convinced his most hardened warriors to share medical supplies. The camp felt different, warmer, despite the eternal cold. Tor's voice drifted from the command tent. "Cold. Clinical. The doctrine is clear about contamination." Kale looked toward the medical tent where a small human woman slept surrounded by soldiers who would have killed her a week ago. "What have you done to my soldiers?" he whispered to the wind. But he already knew the answer. She had reminded them they were alive. The generator sat in the scrapyard like a corpse no one had bothered to bury. Elise found it on her 4th day, half buried under broken armor plates and spent ammunition casings. Model 42 Aeon, according to the faded designation. Old Terran engineering, built to last through anything except neglect. She ran her fingers over the cooling vents, cataloging damage. Cracked thermal regulator, stripped power coupling, missing half its wiring harness. But the core assembly was intact. "This thing still works," she said to Rex, who had become her constant shadow. He watched her with those luminous gold eyes but offered no response. Elise smiled anyway. "Echo, I'm going to need your help, and probably a miracle. You got any miracles in your pockets?" Rex tilted his head, the closest he came to communication. It took 18 hours. Elise scavenged parts from destroyed armor, using plate fragments as makeshift heat sinks. She rewired the power coupling with medical tubing reinforced with metal thread. The thermal regulator got replaced with a jury-rigged system involving 2 plasma battery packs and what she privately called aggressive optimism. Soldiers gathered to watch. Not interfering, not helping. Just watching this small human perform surgery on a machine they had written off as dead. When she finally powered it up, the generator hummed, groaned, shuddered, then roared to life with a heat that made everyone step back. Warmth rolled through the scrapyard like a physical thing. Soldiers who had not felt true heat in months turned their faces toward it like flowers toward sun. Scales that had been dull with cold began to shine. Breath that had been visible fog disappeared. Someone made that hiccup cough sound, then another, then half the crowd. Elise wiped grease from her face, grinning like a maniac. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have heat." Kale arrived an hour later to find the impossible. Elise had moved the generator to an abandoned storage tent. She had organized cots in careful rows. Human prisoners on one side, wounded Zorathi on the other. The warmth from the generator filled the space, transforming it from a metal shell into something that almost resembled hope. "This," Elise announced, hands on hips, "is the tent hospital. Neutral ground, no rank, no sides, just triage." Kale stared at the human and Zorathi wounded lying meters apart. His doctrine said this was unacceptable. His soldiers' faces said otherwise. "Why do you help the enemy?" he asked quietly. Elise looked up at him. "Because someone has to remember who we were before we got scared." The words hit like a plasma bolt to the chest. That night, Kyle could not sleep. He kept seeing a village on fire, civilians running, orders to secure the sector by any means necessary. He had been efficient, thorough. He had proven his strength. He had murdered 37 beings who had never held weapons. For honor, Tor had said afterward. For doctrine. Kale had not questioned it. Warriors did not question. But now a human woman with engine grease on her face was asking him why he helped no one. He found himself in the tent hospital near midnight. Elise was checking vitals on a Zorathi soldier with 3rd-degree burns. She moved with the calm efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times. The soldier looked up at her with something like wonder. "You saved Jorex?" he rasped. "3rd platoon, infection gone." Elise smiled. Jorex had good immune response. "I just reminded his body how to fight." "No." The soldier's golden eyes were very bright. "You reminded us we could heal." Kale watched from the entrance. Tor materialized beside him, silent as a blade. "This cannot continue," the advisor whispered. "She makes them weak." "She makes them remember," Kyle replied. "Remembering is dangerous, more dangerous than forgetting." Tor had no answer, but his silence was a promise. The next morning, Rex helped Elise move supplies. They worked in their usual quiet partnership until Elise accidentally knocked over a crate of medical tape. It rolled everywhere. She laughed. "Chasing the rolls. This is why I flunked supply management." Rex bent to help. Their hands touched, reaching for the same roll. He froze. She waited. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. "It hurts less," he whispered, voice raw with disuse, "when we warm up together." Elise felt tears prick her eyes. She gripped his scaled hand gently. "Yeah, Echo. Yeah, it does." That afternoon, 3 more soldiers started speaking again. 2 of them had been silent for 8 months. By evening, the tent hospital buzzed with low conversation, the first real talking the camp had heard in half a year. Tor watched from the command center, making careful notes. Kyle stood in the snow listening to voices drift from the tent hospital. Laughter. Questions. The rusty machinery of community starting to turn again. In her corner, Elise wrote by lamplight, letters to Earth that would never arrive. "Dear Mom," she wrote, "today I taught a monster how to smile. I think maybe the monster was just someone who got too cold for too long. I think maybe that's all any of us are, just people who forgot how to be warm." She sealed the letter carefully, added it to the others, and went to sleep surrounded by patients who trusted her with their lives. Outside, first snow began to fall. Tor sent his first encrypted message to High Command. Subject: corruption protocol required. Target: human medical personnel. The response came 18 hours later. Single word: authorized. Elise had decided that pronouncing Zorathi names was an extreme sport. Kale Var became Big K. Rex was Echo. The grumpy supply officer with the scar across his face became Sarge. The medical coordinator with the nervous twitch became Doc Jr. The soldiers found this hilarious. "Big K," Kale repeated, arms crossed, standing in the doorway of the tent hospital. Elise didn't look up from her inventory tablet. "Would you prefer Big K Daddy?" The hiccup cough sound erupted from 3 different soldiers. Kyle's scales shifted through several colors. "Just Kale is fine. Boring, but fine." She finally looked up. "You need something, or are you here for the ambiance?" He was quiet for a moment. "I came to help." Elise blinked. "The infamous Warlord of Varthal wants to play nurse? I can carry supplies." She studied him, saw something behind the predator eyes, something uncertain. "Okay then." She handed him a crate. "These go to the East Wing. Try not to terrify the patients." Kale lifted the crate with one hand. It would have taken 2 soldiers. "Where do you need it?" "Follow me, Big K." They worked in surprisingly comfortable silence. Kyle carried. Elise organized. Rex shadowed them both, learning by observation. Other soldiers began joining in, moving equipment, redistributing resources. It became something close to teamwork. During a break, Elise watched Kyle arrange medical supplies with meticulous precision. "You're good at this," she observed. "Logistics is warfare without the killing," he replied. "Could also be healthcare without the drama." Kyle's scales shifted again, almost a smile. "Almost." Elise leaned against a support beam. "Can I ask you something?" "You will regardless." "Fair. Why are you really here?" "Helping." Kale set down the crate carefully. "Because you asked why I help no one." The question. It stayed. Good questions do that. She tilted her head. "You know what I think? I suspect you will inform me. I think you're tired. I think you've been tired for a long time. And I think you're looking for a reason to stop being what you've been ordered to be." Kale turned to face her fully. The medical tent suddenly felt very small. You presume much, human. Elise met his gaze without flinching. Nurse privilege. We get to see people when they're not pretending. And what do you see? Someone who wants permission to care again. The words hung between them like suspended particles. Rex made a soft sound from the corner. He held up a medical kit, looking between them questioningly. The moment broke. Yeah, Echo. Elise's voice was gentle. Let me show you how to use that. That evening, something unprecedented happened. Soldiers began sharing fire. It started small. 2 warriors from different platoons sitting close to a heat lamp. Then 4. Then 8. The camp's rigid hierarchy began to blur at the edges. Someone produced a flask of something that smelled like fermented regret. It passed between scaled hands. Stories emerged haltingly at first, then flowing. Battles fought, friends lost, homeworlds remembered. Laughter came easier now. The hiccup cough sound became the camp's unofficial anthem. Tor watched from the command center, jaw tight. Beside him, 2 of his most loyal officers shifted uncomfortably. This is how discipline dies, Tor muttered. Through comfort. In the tent hospital, Elise discovered something fascinating. Zorathi cried through their scales, not with water, but with a faint bioluminescent shimmer that tracked down their faces like captured starlight. Kale had come to check on a soldier with pneumonia. The warrior was recovering but overwhelmed by the relief of breathing freely again. His scales glimmered. Elise watched in wonder. That's beautiful. Kale looked away. We do not speak of it. Why not? Doctrine forbids emotional display. Elise snorted. Doctrine sounds like it was written by someone who never got hurt. It was. Kale's voice was very quiet. It was written by conquerors. She touched his arm gently. Scaled skin was warmer than she expected. Then maybe it's time for a new writer. That night, Rex officially became Elise's medical assistant. She taught him triage, wound care, the basics of field medicine. He learned with frightening speed, his hands careful and deliberate. You're good at this, she told him. Rex looked at his hands like he was seeing them for the first time. I hurt many. Now I help heal. Good trade, Elise said softly. Better trade. The camp's transformation accelerated. Soldiers who had not spoken in months formed quiet friendships. Resources got shared. The rigid meal schedules dissolved into communal eating. Someone rigged a music player. Zorathi harmonics filled the cold air, strange and haunting. Kale stood at his window and listened to his camp remember how to live. Tor approached with a data pad. Commander, I must report concerning activity. Report it in the morning, Kyle said, not turning around. But the regulations clearly state, in the morning, advisor. Tor's silence was glacial. As you command. After he left, Kale allowed himself the smallest smile. The first genuine one in 3 years. Below, Elise emerged from the tent hospital, stretching tired muscles. She looked up, caught his silhouette in the window, and waved. Kyle, shocked at himself, waved back. Rex, standing beside Elise, made that hiccup cough sound. What's funny? Elise asked. Rex pointed at Kale's window. Big K waves like confused child. Elise laughed so hard she had to sit down. Above them, Kale realized he was still waving and dropped his hand like it had betrayed him. That night was the first in 6 months without a single death in the camp. They celebrated quietly, carefully, like people remembering how to hope. In the command center, Tor deleted his 3rd message to High Command, then rewrote it with different, more urgent language. The temperature had dropped 5 degrees, but somehow the camp felt warmer. The fever came like a ghost through the camp. First 2 soldiers reported chills. By morning, 17. By noon, 43. Zorathi physiology was robust, but this infection moved fast, attacking respiratory systems with vicious efficiency. Elise stood in the tent hospital, surrounded by patients struggling to breathe, and felt the familiar ice of crisis settle over her. Okay, she said to Rex. We've got maybe 20 hours before this becomes a morgue. I need samples, temperature readings, and someone who knows local flora. Cale entered at that moment, his presence filling the doorway. You have an outbreak. No kidding, Sherlock. She was already moving between patients, checking vitals. You have any native plants with anti-inflammatory properties? Why would I know that? Because you've lived on this ice ball for 3 years, and I've been here a week. Educate me fast or watch your soldiers die. Choose. Cale's jaw worked. Then he nodded. Follow me. They took a transport to the forest edge, a wasteland of crystalline trees and frozen undergrowth. Cale pointed to a cluster of plants with blue-veined leaves. NCC 117. We call them frost breath. Toxic if consumed raw. But? Elise prompted, already collecting samples. But when boiled, the toxin breaks down into a compound we use for equipment cleaning. It generates heat. Heat kills infection. Elise's mind raced. We need massive quantities. Can your people harvest without getting poisoned? Yes. But even if this works, no buts. Just harvest. She met his eyes. Trust me. Kyle held her gaze. Then he activated his comm. All units. Emergency harvest protocol. Authorization Kyle VAR. Move. What followed was controlled chaos. Soldiers harvested frost breath by the hundreds of kilos. Elise and Rex set up processing stations, boiling the plants in salvaged drums, creating a crude but potent anti-inflammatory compound. The 10 hospital became a factory, every able-bodied person working the production line. Cale worked beside Elise for 18 straight hours, carrying, mixing, distributing. At one point, exhausted, Elise stumbled. Cale caught her before she hit the ground. Rest, he ordered. No time. She pushed herself upright. They need me. They need you alive. Then make yourself useful and hand me that stirring rod. Cale did, and stayed. Somewhere around hour 15, Elise realized she was teaching a Warlord basic medical chemistry. Cale absorbed information like a tactical briefing, asking precise questions, making connections she had not expected. You would have made a good doctor, she said quietly. I made a better killer, he replied. Past tense? His scales shifted through colors she was learning to read. Uncertain, hopeful, perhaps. By dawn, they had treated 90% of infected soldiers. Fever rates dropped, breathing eased. The crisis passed. The relief was physical. Soldiers who had braced for mass casualties instead witnessed recovery. Some cried, scales glimmering in the generator light. Others simply sat in stunned silence. Elise collapsed against a supply crate, too exhausted to care about dignity. Cale sat beside her. Not close, not distant, present. 93% survival rate, he said, against an outbreak that should have killed half the camp. His voice carried something she had not heard before. Wonder. Teamwork makes the dream work, Elise mumbled. That makes no logical sense. Welcome to human idioms. We excel at nonsense. Cale made a sound that was almost a laugh. Almost. That evening, the soldiers built a bonfire, not for warmth, for celebration. The first real celebration since the war began. Someone found alcohol that definitely violated 17 regulations. It passed from hand to hand. Stories got told. Songs got sung badly. The camp transformed into something alive. Cale stood at the edge of the firelight. Elise appeared beside him, holding 2 cups of something that smelled toxic. Drink, she ordered. Doctor's orders. He accepted the cup, tasted it. His eyes watered. What is this? Pure regret with a hint of berry. She grinned. Drink up, Big K. He did. And for the first time in 3 years, Cale VAR smiled. Not almost. Not maybe. Genuinely smiled. Elise saw it and felt something warm bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. Rex approached, now fully integrated into the medical team. He wore a makeshift badge Elise had made. Official Echo, Assistant Healer. You did well, Cale told him. Rex's scales glimmered. We did well. Together. That night, Elise wrote by firelight. Dear Mom, today I taught a monster to smile. Turns out he was just someone who got too cold for too long. Turns out that's all any of us are. Just people who forgot how to be warm. She sealed the letter, added it to her collection, and went to sleep satisfied. In the command center, Torzan watched recordings of the celebration, watched Kale smile, watched soldiers embrace, watched discipline dissolve into something softer. He uploaded everything to High Command with a single note: the corruption is complete. Authorization requested for final solution. The response came within the hour. Encrypted. Absolute. Elimination order confirmed. Target: human medical personnel. Deadline: 48 hours. Secondary target: Commander Kale Var if non-compliant. Compliance is not optional. Tor forwarded the order to Kale's personal terminal, then went to sleep, satisfied. Kale woke to the message at 0400 hours, read it 3 times. Each reading made it worse. He stood at his window, watching the dying bonfire, watching Elise's tent, where she slept surrounded by patients she had saved. The order was clear: eliminate her, or be eliminated. For 3 years, Kyle had followed orders without question. Orders had turned him into a weapon, efficient, deadly, empty. Then a human woman had crashed into his camp and reminded his soldiers how to laugh. He looked at the message again, at the countdown. 47 hours remaining. Below, Elise emerged from her tent, stumbling toward the medical supplies, probably checking on overnight patients even when off duty. She looked up, saw him watching, waved sleepily. Kale did not wave back. He stood frozen, trapped between doctrine and something he could not name, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Kale found Elise during the evening supply run, alone at the perimeter fence. "Walk with me," he said. It was not quite an order, not quite a request. Elise looked at his face and saw something that made her stomach drop. Okay. They walked past the sentries, past the tent hospital, toward the edge of the camp where ice met darkness. Kale's silence was heavy, not comfortable, suffocating. Finally, at the barrier fence, he stopped. "I received an order," he said. His voice was flat, empty. "I am to eliminate you within 46 hours, or be eliminated myself." Elise absorbed this. "Oh, that is your response? Oh, what else is there?" She turned to face him fully. "You going to do it?" Kyle's hands flexed. "I should. Doctrine demands it. But, the word came out broken. I do not want to. Why not? Because you make them laugh. Because you fixed what I broke. Because—" He stopped. Started again. "Because you asked me why I help no one." Elise waited. Kale looked at the frozen horizon. 3 years ago, we invaded a settlement, mining colony, civilian population, mostly families. They resisted. Poorly. We had orders to secure the sector by any means necessary. He paused. Elise did not interrupt. 37 beings, unarmed, hiding in shelters. My commander said, "Leave no witnesses." I said, "Yes, sir." I was efficient, thorough. I proved my strength. His voice cracked. The smallest fracture in stone. There were children, 11 children. They begged. I killed them anyway, for honor, for doctrine, for nothing that mattered. Silence stretched between them. Snow began to fall. After, they promoted me, called me a model warrior. I accepted the praise. I buried what I felt. I became the warlord they needed. He turned to Elise, and for the first time, she saw him completely. Not the predator, not the commander. The person underneath. Broken, haunted, lost. I sleep 2 hours a night because the children visit. Every night. They ask why. I have no answer. I have never had an answer. Elise felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm sorry." "Why?" "You did not kill them." "I'm sorry you had to. I'm sorry someone made you think that was strength." Kale's laugh was bitter. And now I am ordered to kill you, to prove myself again, to maintain the doctrine." He looked at his hands. "These hands heal nothing. They only break." Elise stepped closer, touched his chest plate, right over where a human heart would be. "You still feel..." "What?" "You feel guilt, grief, regret. You feel what you did was wrong. That means something inside you is still alive." He stared at her. "Why do you not hate me?" "Because hate doesn't heal anyone." And because she met his eyes steadily, "You're more than the worst thing you ever did." Something in Cale broke, not loudly, not dramatically, just crumbled quietly under the weight of years. He sank to his knees in the snow. Elise knelt with him, and Cale Var cried, not through scales, through sounds, harsh, broken sounds torn from somewhere deep. He shook with it. 3 years of suppressed grief erupting in the middle of nowhere, with only a human woman to witness. Elise did not touch him, just stayed present. Sometimes that was enough. When he finally stopped, his voice was raw. This war began because of a translation error, a diplomatic message misinterpreted. "We thought your people declared conquest. You thought we declared alliance. By the time we understood, hundreds had died. Neither side would admit the mistake, so we kept killing. All of this for miscommunication, for pride," Cale said, "for refusing to say we were wrong." Elise sat back in the snow. "Well, that's deeply stupid." Despite everything, Cale laughed. Sharp, surprised. "Yes, it is." They sat in silence. Snow accumulated on their shoulders. "I killed hundreds to prove strength," Cale said finally. "You saved dozens to prove kindness. Who is the monster?" Elise considered this. "You tell me, can monsters change?" "No. Good thing you're not a monster then. Just someone who made terrible choices." And yes, she raised a hand before he could argue, they were terrible. They were unforgivable. But that doesn't mean you can't do better. How? Stop killing. Start saving. It cannot be that simple. It's that simple. Not easy. Simple. Her voice softened. You don't need permission from doctrine, Kyle. You just need to choose. What if I choose and fail? Then you try again. That's what being human means. Trying again even when it's hard. I am not human. No. But you could be honorary. We'll teach you. First lesson, crying doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. Cale looked at her, this small, fierce creature who had crashed into his world and refused to be destroyed by it. Why? Why what? Why do you care if I change? Elise smiled sadly. Because someone has to. Because you asked for help even if you didn't know it. Because I'm a nurse and we're pathologically unable to stop fixing things. Even broken warlords, especially broken warlords. She stood, offered her hand. Come on, Big K. We've got 40-something hours to figure out how to not get executed. Let's not waste them. Cale took her hand, let himself be pulled upright by someone half his size with twice his courage. Back in his quarters, Cale stared at the elimination order, then deleted it. A new message appeared immediately. Compliance confirmed? Cale typed slowly. Negative. Order refused. The response was instant. You understand the consequences? Cale looked toward the tent hospital, toward the warmth, toward the first real thing he had chosen in 3 years. Yes, he typed. I understand. He sent the message and felt something strange. Not fear, not regret, relief. At dawn, Rex found one of Elise's letters, read it with growing understanding, showed it to 3 soldiers. They showed 3 more. By evening, every soldier in camp had read her words, had seen themselves in her descriptions, had understood that the human who saved them also saw them as people worth saving. In the command center, Tor received confirmation. Imperial forces would arrive at dawn. The camp would be secured. Doctrine would be restored. He did not inform Kyle. Outside, first light touched the horizon. Elise woke to find Rex sitting beside her cot, holding her collection of letters, tears tracking down his scales. She sat up slowly. Echo? He handed her the letters. We read. All of us. We did not know you saw us this way. What way? Worth saving, he whispered. Elise felt her throat tighten. You were always worth saving. Then we save you, Rex said. When they come, who's coming? His golden eyes held terrible knowledge. The ones who make us forget we were alive. They came at dawn. Imperial shock troops poured through the gates like a dark tide. Not the camp's soldiers, fresh forces, loyal, uncompromised by warmth or laughter or a human woman's stubborn compassion. Kale woke to weapons in his face. Commander Kale Var. Tor's voice dripped satisfaction. You are relieved of command for emotional corruption and failure to execute lawful orders. You will be detained, pending tribunal. Kale did not resist. Could not. 20 soldiers surrounded him, weapons trained. As they dragged him to confinement, he saw his own warriors watching. Confused, angry, uncertain. Stand down, he ordered them. Do not engage. But, Commander, that is an order. The hardest order he had ever given. In the tent hospital, Elise heard the commotion, ran outside, saw Kale being shackled with powered restraints that hummed against his scales. Their eyes met across the compound. Run, he mouthed. She shook her head. Not my style. Shock troops hit her from behind. She went down hard, vision sparking. Hands yanked her upright. Zip ties cut into her wrists. Rex lunged from the crowd. 2 soldiers slammed him against a wall. He slumped, gasping. No, Elise shouted. Don't hurt him, please. Tor approached, immaculate in dress uniform. Dr. Rowe, you are charged with corruption of military personnel, violation of wartime protocols, and unauthorized medical intervention. Sentence: immediate execution. Elise spat blood. Wow, not even a fake trial? Efficiency. This is not theater, human. This is doctrine. They dragged her to the central plaza. Someone had erected a post. Execution style. Public. Designed for maximum impact. Kale fought his restraints hard enough to crack the metal. The guards shocked him. He convulsed but did not stop struggling. Soldiers lined the plaza. Camp personnel, forced to witness. Some looked relieved. Many looked sick. A few were crying. Rex pushed through the crowd, scales dull with shock. He tried to reach Elise. Guards shoved him back. He fell, did not get up, just curled into himself, regressing into the traumatized silence he had finally escaped. No, Elise whispered, seeing him break. Echo, no. Don't go back there. Rex did not respond. Tor stood before the assembly, voice carrying across the frozen air. This human has corrupted our strength, made us weak, made us forget what we are. We remembered what we were, a young soldier shouted. She helped us remember. Silence him. They did, efficiently. Kale watched, helpless, as they tied Elise to the post. She did not beg, did not plead, just stood straight, looking at the soldiers she had saved. Her voice carried clearly. I don't regret it. Any of it. You deserve to heal. You deserve to laugh. You deserve to feel human. She smiled sadly. Sarathi, I mean. Several soldiers made wounded sounds. Tor raised his sidearm. Any last words, human? Elise looked at Kale, then at Rex, still curled on the ground, then at the soldiers who had shared fire and stories. Yeah, keep each other warm. That's all that matters. Just keep each other warm. Tor aimed. Kyle roared, a sound of pure anguish that echoed off metal walls. He thrashed against restraints, scales bleeding where metal cut deep. He would break himself trying to break free. Elise closed her eyes. Movement in the crowd. Rex stood, slowly, shaking. In his hands the generator, the 42 Aeon she had repaired with scrap metal and hope. The crowd parted around him, silent, stunned. Tor turned, weapons still raised. Stand down, soldier! Rex did not stand down. His hands found the activation switch. Kyle stopped struggling. understanding flooding through his rage. "Rex!" Elise breathed. The young soldier's voice was raw but clear. "She taught us warmth returns." He activated the generator. Heat exploded across the plaza like a physical blow. Steam rose from the frozen ground. Soldiers gasped as warmth they had nearly forgotten washed over them. Scales brightened, breaths deepened. It felt like waking up. Memories hit them. Before the war, before the cold, before they learned that feeling was weakness. Home, laughter, touch, joy. All the things doctrine had burned away. One soldier dropped to his knees, then another, then dozens, crying. Not from pain, from remembering who they had been. Tor steadied his aim. "Last mistake, soldier." Kale threw everything he had into breaking free. The restraints cracked. Tor's finger tightened on the trigger. "It was she who brought fire back," Kale roared, voice carrying over everything. "She reminded us we were alive." Young soldiers, the ones Elise had taught to tend wounds, formed a circle around her. Not aggressive, protective. Tor swung his weapon toward them. "You will stand down." The soldiers did not move. More joined them. Veterans. The ones who had shared fire. The ones who had laughed for the first time in months. The ones who had cried under the generator's heat. Tor faced a wall of his own soldiers, weapons lowered, faces set. "You are all contaminated," he hissed. "No," a soldier replied quietly. "We were contaminated before." She cleaned the wound. Tor fired, not at Elise, at the generator. The shot hit center mass. Alarms shrieked. The generator's hum rose to a scream. "Overload imminent," someone shouted. Rex stood frozen, holding a bomb. Elise saw it happening, saw Rex unable to move, saw the plaza about to become a kill zone. She broke free from the post. Zip ties tearing through flesh, sprinted forward, covered Rex with her body just as the generator exploded. The blast threw them both. Heat, light, impact, silence. Snow and ash fell like grief. Kale finally broke his restraints, stumbled forward, found Elise in the wreckage, barely conscious, bleeding, wrapped around Rex like a shield. The young soldier was crying, scales glimmering. "You saved me." "Course I did," she whispered. "You're my echo." Kale lifted her carefully. She felt impossibly light, impossibly fragile, impossibly brave. "See?" she breathed, looking at his face. Still warm, the world. Then she passed out. Kale held her. Something inside him, carefully controlled for 3 years, shattered completely. He cried. Not hidden, not suppressed. Openly, tears tracking down his scales in bioluminescent paths. A veteran soldier saw, stared, then began to cry too. Another joined. Then another. Within seconds, the entire plaza was weeping. Hundreds of warriors bred for conquest, crying for a human woman who taught them warmth was not weakness. Tor watched his army dissolve. "You are all corrupted," he screamed. No one listened. Soldiers advanced on him, disarmed him, gently, efficiently, without violence. "You are relieved," a sergeant said quietly. "We choose warmth." In Kyle's arms, Elise stirred, opened her eyes to see an army crying. "Did we win?" she whispered. Kyle looked at his soldiers, at their tears, at their choice. "Yes," he said. "We won." The medical tent became a war room of healing. Elise woke 6 hours later, right arm bandaged heavily, ribs taped, head pounding. Rex sat beside her, reading her letters aloud to a crowd of soldiers. "She taught us fire returns," he said, voice steady now. "She reminded us we burn." The soldiers listened with the intensity of people discovering sacred text. Elise tried to sit up. Her body lodged formal complaints. "Easy," Big K's voice rumbled. "You lost blood," damaged the arm, possibly cracked 3 ribs. Kel sat on her other side, still wearing shattered restraints like broken jewelry. "You broke free," she observed, voice rough. Motivation proved sufficient. She managed a weak smile. "Miss me?" His scales shifted through colors, extensively. Around them, The tent bustled with organized chaos. Soldiers worked together, human prisoners and Zarathi warriors side by side, preparing for what came next, because something was definitely coming. Tor sat in confinement, silent and seething, but his message had already gone out. High Command knew the camp was compromised, knew Kale had broken doctrine, knew a human had corrupted an entire battalion. They would respond. "How long?" Elise asked. 12 hours, Kale replied. "Maybe less." She nodded. "Then we work fast. You need rest. I'll rest when I'm dead." She pushed herself upright despite his protest. "Where's Echo?" "Here." Rex appeared carrying supplies. Official assistant healer reporting. "Good. Get me the comm system." She looked at Kale. "And you need to make a speech." "I do not speech. Learn fast, Big K. Your people need to hear why we're not following orders anymore." 2 hours later, every soldier in camp assembled in the plaza. The blast crater from the generator had been transformed into a symbolic center. Someone had placed Elise's letters around the edges, protected by clear plating. Kale stood at the crater's rim, no armor, no weapons, just himself. He had never felt more exposed. 3 years ago, he began, voice carrying, "I killed 37 civilians, for doctrine, for honor, for strength. I told myself it was necessary. I told myself warriors do not feel." The crowd was silent. I was wrong. He let the words fall heavy. "Feeling is not weakness. It is proof we are alive. And I have spent 3 years forgetting how to be alive." He looked at Elise, who nodded encouragingly from her position, leaning against Rex. "A human crashed here. She should have been my enemy. Instead, she reminded us what we lost. She taught us that caring is stronger than killing, that healing is braver than hurting, that warmth survives when everything else freezes." His scales glimmered. He did not hide it. High Command will call this corruption. They will say we are weak. They are wrong. We are finally strong enough to feel. The soldiers began to glow. Hundreds of scale patterns shimmering with emotion. "I am your commander. I give you one order. Choose warmth. Choose healing. Choose to be more than weapons. And if they come to force us back into the cold, we resist. Not with violence, with choice." A veteran stepped forward. "What are our new orders, Commander?" Kale smiled. "The real kind. Help each other. Protect each other. Remember you are alive." The soldier saluted. Different from before. Fist over heart instead of throat. First warmth protocol salute. Others followed. The new salute spread through the ranks. Elise watched, throat tight. Rex squeezed her good hand. "You did this," he whispered. "No." She squeezed back. "You all did. I just reminded you how." That night they burned the old doctrine. Not violently, ceremonially. The code that forbade emotional display. The regulations that made them machines. The orders that demanded strength without feeling. It all went into the fire. As it burned, soldiers added personal items, commendations earned for brutality, weapons they no longer wanted to carry, pieces of armor that felt like cages. The fire grew until it rivaled the generator's warmth. Kyle added his commander's insignia, the symbol of his rank under the old system. From the flames, soldiers crafted new symbols. 2 hands crossed over fire, one scaled, one human, the new insignia. A soldier brought it to Kale on a piece of reclaimed metal. "Commander, your new rank." "I am not your commander anymore," Kale said. "I am your brother. We lead together." "Then, brother," the soldier replied, "wear this, so we remember what we chose." Kale accepted it, pinned it over his heart. Across the camp, similar symbols appeared. On tents, on equipment, on armor. The symbol of warmth protocol spreading like wildfire. In the tent hospital, now officially the healing center, Elise supervised with one arm and a sling. Rex had taken over most duties, showing remarkable skill. "You're a natural," she told him. He looked at his hands. "Before, these only destroyed. You showed different path." "There's always a different path, Echo. Always. Soldiers came to help without being ordered, organizing supplies, building additional space, creating a medical school from spare parts and determination. "This is the academy," one soldier declared, hanging a handmade sign. "We learn healing here." Elise felt tears threaten. "Damn right you do." As midnight approached, Kale found her doing inventory despite exhaustion. "You should rest, so should you." "I do not rest well. PTSD is a thing, Big K, even for warlords." She set down her tablet, especially for warlords. He sat beside her. "Strange. I feel more at peace facing execution than I ever did following orders." "That's called freedom. Turns out it's terrifying. Also exhilarating. Also that." She smiled. "You did good today. The speech, the symbol, all of it. I merely repeated what you taught." "No, you chose it. That's different. That's harder." They sat in comfortable silence. "Elise," Kale said carefully, "when they come, it will not be gentle. I know. You could leave. We could arrange transport. You would be safe." She looked at him steadily. "Would you leave?" "No." "Then why would I?" "Because you are not Zorathi. This is not your war." Elise touched the new insignia on his chest. "Wrong, Big K. This became my war the moment you let me live. We're in this together." His scales shifted through colors she was learning meant gratitude, joy, fear, hope. Together, he repeated, "Yes." Dawn came cold and clear. On the horizon, ships descended, Imperial forces, fresh, uncorrupted, ready to restore doctrine by any means necessary. The camp assembled, not in combat formation, in circles, protective rings around the healing center, around each other. Kale stood at the front, new insignia bright against his chest. Elise stood beside him, one arm in a sling, the other holding Rex's hand. The soldiers stood behind them, 300 warriors who had remembered how to feel. The ships landed. Ramps descended. Imperial Commander Zeth Moore emerged, pristine, cold. Everything the old system demanded. He surveyed the camp, saw the symbols, the tears, the choices. His voice cut like ice. "Commander Kale Var, stand down and submit to tribunal." Kale did not move. "No," he said simply. "Then you will be removed. By force if necessary." "Necessary," Kale replied, "is subjective." Behind him, 300 soldiers made the new salute, fist over heart. "We choose warmth," they said as one. The Imperial forces raised weapons, and the real battle began. The standoff held for exactly 30 seconds. Then Imperial Commander Zeth Moore gave the order. Subdue by force, minimal casualties, restore doctrine. The Imperial soldiers advanced, professional, efficient, cold. Kale's soldiers did not attack, did not raise weapons. They locked arms. Human prisoners and Zorathi warriors linked together, forming a living barrier around the healing center. Zeth stopped. Confusion flickered across his scaled face. "You will not resist?" "We already are," Kale replied. "This is not resistance, this is suicide." "No." Elise stepped forward, voice carrying despite her injuries. "This is choice, and choice is the only weapon you can't take." The Imperial forces hesitated. These were warriors. They knew combat, knew violence. This was neither. "Break them," Zeth ordered. Imperial soldiers moved forward with shock batons, hit the first line. The linked soldiers absorbed the blows without breaking formation. Some cried out. None let go. Again, Zeth commanded. Again they struck. Again the line held. A young Imperial soldier faltered. His baton lowered. "Sir, they're not fighting back." "Then it should be easier," Zeth snapped. "Continue." But the young soldier was staring at something. The tears, the way the camp soldiers glowed with emotion while protecting each other, the absolute absence of hatred in their eyes. "They're not afraid," he whispered. "Fear is irrelevant," Zeth replied. "Break the formation." But more Imperial soldiers were hesitating now, seeing their enemies refuse to become enemies, seeing the symbol of crossed hands. seeing humans and Zarathi protecting each other. One of Kale's veterans began to sing, low, mournful, a traditional Zarathi song about home. Others joined. The song grew, not a war cry, a lament, for everything lost, for everyone broken by doctrine. The Imperial forces stood frozen, listening to warriors sing instead of fight. Szeth raised his sidearm. If they will not fight, they will die. He aimed at Kale. Elise moved. Despite her injuries, despite the pain, placed herself in front of the warlord who had chosen warmth over doctrine. "Shoot me first," she said clearly. Rex stepped beside her. "Me second." Then every soldier in the formation stepped forward, creating layers upon layers of bodies between Szeth and Kale. "We all die together," a veteran said. "Or we all live together. Your choice, Commander." Szeth's weapon trembled. "This is madness." "No," Kyle said, gently moving Elise aside and stepping forward. "This is sanity. For the first time in 3 years, I am sane." He opened his arms, unarmed, vulnerable, glowing with tears. "Look at me, Commander. Look at us. We are not weak. We have not forgotten how to fight. We have remembered why not to." Szeth stared, at the tears, at the joy beneath the pain, at soldiers who had found something stronger than orders. "Your people will die," he said, but his voice had lost certainty. "Everyone dies," Elise replied. "Question is whether you die cold or warm. We chose warm." An Imperial soldier lowered his weapon, then another, then dozens. Szeth spun. "Raise your weapons. That is an order." The soldiers looked at their commander, at the crying warriors who refused to fight them, at the human woman with one arm in a sling standing between armies. They lowered their weapons completely. One stepped forward, saluted the old way, then placed his fist over his heart. "The new way. Permission to request reassignment, sir. To hear. To warmth." Szeth's face cycled through colors. Rage, disbelief, something that might have been fear. "Traitors. All of you." He raised his weapon toward his own soldier. Kale moved faster than seemed possible for his size, disarmed Szeth without injuring him, held the weapon carefully. "No more," he said quietly. "No more killing for doctrine. No more dying for pride." He placed the weapon on the ground between them. "I give you the same choice I gave my people. Choose warmth, or leave, but you will not make us cold again." Szeth stood alone, his army defecting, his authority crumbling, everything he had built on obedience dissolving in the face of feeling. He looked at Kale, at the tears tracking down his scales, at the smile beneath them. "What are you?" Szeth whispered. "I am alive," Kale replied. "Finally." The Imperial commander stood silent for a long moment. Then his shoulders slumped. His scales flickered through colors, and he began to cry. Not from sadness, from exhaustion, from 3 decades of suppressing everything that made him sentient. He fell to his knees in the snow. "I am so tired," he said. "So tired of being cold." Elise approached carefully, knelt beside him. "We have a healing center. We teach there, if you want." Szeth looked at her, at this small human who had broken an empire with nothing but compassion. "How?" he asked. "How do you not hate us?" "Because hate doesn't warm anyone," Elise said simply. "And we're really committed to this warmth thing now." Despite everything, Szeth laughed. Raw, broken, real. Around them, Imperial and camp soldiers began talking, cautiously, then earnestly, sharing stories, finding common ground, discovering they all hurt the same way. By evening, the armies had merged. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Rex organized the integration with surprising skill. Healing Center expands. We teach everyone now. Former Imperial soldiers worked beside camp veterans, building new structures. Someone rigged additional generators. Someone else started a communal kitchen. Kale found Elise supervising, despite exhaustion. Her arm had started bleeding again through the bandage. "You need treatment. After. Too much to do." He picked her up carefully. She yelped. "Big K, put me down." "No, you teach us to care, accept being cared for." He carried her to the medical wing, set her gently on a cot, began changing her bandages with surprising skill. "You learned," she observed. "I watched you." He worked carefully. "You have partial nerve damage. The arm may not fully recover." "I know." Her voice was quiet. "Worth it, though. Worth permanent injury? Worth you. Worth Echo. Worth all of them remembering how to feel." She met his eyes. "Yeah. Worth it." Kale's hand stilled. His scales shimmered. "Elise Rowe. You are the bravest being I have encountered." "Big K. I'm pretty sure I'm the stubbornest being you've encountered. There's a difference. Perhaps they are the same thing. Perhaps." They sat in comfortable silence while he finished the bandaging. Outside, fires burned. Not of war, of celebration, of warmth freely chosen. Soldiers sang, both armies, harmonies that had never existed before, creating something new from old divisions. Zeth appeared in the doorway, hesitant, changed into camp clothes instead of imperial uniform. "Commander Kale, Miss Rowe. May I?" "Always room for reformed warlords," Elise said. "I am not reformed," Zeth replied. "I am confused. Join the club. We meet every day." Kale gestured to a seat. Zeth sat. "I sent a message to High Command, told them the situation, and they are recalling me, calling this camp a loss." "Good," Elise said. "We were planning to rename it anyway. Got any suggestions?" Zeth stared at her, then laughed again. That sound was getting easier. "No, but I know who should name it." "Who?" He looked at Rex, visible through the window, teaching a group of soldiers proper bandaging technique, the one who carried fire. That night, Rex stood before the assembled masses. Camp soldiers, imperial defectors, human prisoners, all waiting. He held up a metal plate with a symbol of crossed hands. "This place," he said, voice strong now, "is Academy of Living Fire. We learn healing, we learn feeling, we learn warmth lasts." The crowd erupted, not with violence, with joy. The new name spread. Within hours, someone had created a sign. Within days, it would be official. Elise watched from Kale's side. Her good hand found his. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it," he corrected. "We just remembered how." "No, Big K," she squeezed his hand. "We all did it. Together." Above them, stars began to appear. The first clear night in weeks. Somewhere in orbit, High Command was scrambling, trying to understand how 300 soldiers had broken an empire with tears and choice. But down on Varthal, in a camp renamed for fire, nobody was thinking about empires. They were thinking about warmth, and how it felt to finally be alive. 7 days later, Elise woke to sunlight. Actual sunlight, not the pale ghost that usually filtered through Varthal's clouds. Real, warm, golden light. She blinked at the ceiling of what had become her recovery room. Someone had decorated it with crystalline flowers, Zorathi tradition for honored injured. Kael sat in the corner, reviewing data pads. He had taken to spending mornings there, working while she slept, pretending he was not keeping vigil. He noticed her awareness. "You are awake, apparently." She tried to sit up. Her arm protested but obeyed. Progress. He was beside her instantly, helping adjust pillows. "You should rest more. I've been resting for a week. Time to move. The doctors say the doctors can come tell me themselves." She smiled. "Where's Echo?" "Teaching." Kyle's voice carried pride. "He has 73 students now." 73. Her eyebrows rose. "We only had 30 patients. The Imperial defectors want to learn. So do soldiers from nearby camps who heard about us." He handed her a datapad. "We have received 417 applications for the Academy of Living Fire. Rex is overwhelmed, happy, Both. Elise scrolled through the applications. Holy shit. They're from everywhere. Word spreads, Kyle said simply. Soldiers are tired of being cold. She reached for his hand. He took it carefully. You did this. You showed them it was possible. We did this. He squeezed gently. Together. Fair enough. She looked at her bandaged arm. Doc Jr. says I'll get maybe 60% function back. I am sorry. Don't be. She met his eyes steadily. I'd do it again. Every time. I know. That is what frightens me. Your capacity for sacrifice is excessive, says the guy who broke military restraints with his bare hands. That was different. How? That was for you. The words hung between them. Heavy. True. Complicated. Elise felt her throat tighten. Big K.I. He placed a finger gently over her lips. Do not. We are not those people. Not what people? The ones who need to name every feeling. We are comfortable. Is that not enough? She smiled against his finger. Yeah, that's enough. That afternoon, Kyle carried her, despite protests, to the Academy's first official graduation. Rex stood at the front, wearing an instructor's insignia someone had crafted. Behind him, 23 students. Zorathi, human, even 2 from species Elise did not recognize. All learning to heal instead of hurt. Today, Rex began, voice steady, we complete basic trauma care training. You know, wound management, infection control, triage. But most important, he touched the crossed hands symbol. You learned warmth protocol. The students stood straighter. Warmth protocol, Rex continued, is simple. We care. We heal. We remember others feel like we feel. This is not weakness. This is strength doctrine never taught. He looked at Elise, at Kale, at the assembly of veterans and newcomers. My teacher, he gestured to Elise, asked why we help enemy. She said someone must remember who we were before fear. He paused. I say someone must be who we will be after fear ends. We are that someone. The graduates received their insignias. 2 hands crossed over flame. The symbol spreading across the quadrant now. Elise watched with tears streaming. Kale's arm came around her shoulders. You should smile, he murmured. You created this? We created this. She leaned into him. All of us. After the ceremony, Zeth approached. The former Imperial commander wore Academy instructor colors now. Miss Rowe, I wanted to thank you. For what? Getting you demoted and reassigned? For reminding me I am sentient. He held out a data pad. I have been documenting the transformation, the psychological impacts of warmth protocol. High Command is not pleased, but they are listening. Good. Make them uncomfortable. She took the pad. That's how change happens. I am learning this. He glanced at the Academy. We have 6 more camps requesting instructors. The movement spreads faster than expected. Because people are tired of freezing, Elise said simply. They're just waiting for permission to thaw. That evening, Elise insisted on walking to the observation point where Kale had first questioned his orders. They stood at the fence, looking over transformed landscape. The Academy sprawled below. Lights in every tent. Fires burning. Voices singing. Your people talk about souls, Kale said quietly. Mine talk about flame. His scales glimmered in the firelight. I think they are the same thing. Elise took his hand, scaled skin warm against hers. Yeah? Yes. Both are the thing that makes us more than flesh. Both are what doctrine tried to extinguish. Both are what you taught us to feed. She squeezed his hand. You know what I think? I suspect you will inform me regardless. Damn right. She smiled up at him. I think it's all just about deciding to care when caring costs everything. That's the flame. That's the soul. Just choosing warmth even when cold is easier. Kyle was quiet for a long moment. That is, profoundly simple. Best things usually are. They watched the Academy in comfortable silence. Below, Rex was teaching an evening class. His voice drifted up, confident and clear. Remember, he was saying, healing is not fixing. Healing is being present while others fix themselves. We provide warmth. They provide will. Together, we provide hope. Elise felt fresh tears. Echo's going to be better at this than I ever was. He learned from the best. Kale's voice was soft. As did I. She looked up at him. What did you learn, Big K? That strength is not absence of feeling. It is feeling everything and choosing kindness anyway. He met her eyes. You embodied that. You gave us permission to try. And you actually tried. That's the hard part. Yes, it was. It is. But his scales shifted through colors. Joy, gratitude, peace. It is also easier than being empty. The sun set over Varthal. Not cold anymore, still harsh, still difficult, but alive with possibility. 3 months later, High Command officially recognized the Academy of Living Fire as experimental therapeutic installation. Not approval, not endorsement, but acknowledgement. It was enough to begin. 6 months later, similar academies existed on 4 other worlds. The symbol of crossed hands spread. Soldiers teaching soldiers that feeling was not fatal. A year later, a young soldier from the academy mediated a ceasefire between 2 warring factions. Not through violence, through warmth protocol. Both sides chose peace over freezing. The war did not end immediately, but it changed. Slowly, painfully, hopefully. And on Varthal, in the original academy, Elise Rowe taught her final class. The nerve damage had progressed. She could no longer perform complex medical procedures, but she could teach, could inspire, could remind students why warmth mattered. Kale sat in the back row, as he did for every lecture, learning, supporting, present. So remember, Elise concluded, her voice carrying despite exhaustion, you're not here to save everyone. You're here to remind everyone they're worth saving. There's a difference. A student raised a scaled hand. What if they do not believe? Elise smiled. Then you believe for them. You hold the warmth until they can feel it themselves. That's the protocol. The class ended. Students filed out, energized and ready. Rex approached, now deputy director. Time for rest. I'm fine, Echo. You are exhausted. Rest. She started to argue, saw Kale's expression. Fine. Tyranny by caring. I'm outvoted. Kale carried her back to their quarters. She had stopped protesting months ago. He settled her carefully. She caught his hand before he could pull away. Hey, Big K? Yes? Thank you. For choosing warmth. For choosing this. She struggled with words. For being brave enough to change. His scales shimmered. Thank you for crash landing in my camp and refusing to let me stay cold. She laughed. Best, worst day of my life. Mine also. That night, Elise wrote her final letter. Dear Mom, I know you'll never read this, but I need to write it anyway. I crash-landed on the coldest planet in the sector, met the scariest warlord you can imagine, and taught him to smile. Turns out that's all any of us need. Someone who sees us freezing and refuses to let us die cold. Someone who chooses warmth even when doctrine demands ice. I lost some function in my arm, gained 300 brothers who learned to cry. Fair trade. The academy is thriving. Echo, my best student, runs it better than I ever could. And Kale, the warlord who should have killed me, he sits through every lecture taking notes like a student. We're not fixed, Mom. We're healing. There's a difference. I think that's all we can ever do. Just keep each other warm. Just refuse to let the cold win. I think maybe that's what love is, not the romantic kind, the other kind, the kind that says, I see you freezing, and I will burn myself to keep you warm. And then we all burn together, and call it hope. She sealed the letter, added it to hundreds of others. The collection had become legendary. Students read them for inspiration, veterans read them for comfort. Outside, snow began to fall, but the fires burned brighter. On every tent in the academy, banners flew, the crossed hands symbol, and beneath it, words that had become their mantra. We heal the line. Elise fell asleep to the sound of singing, hundreds of voices in harmony, creating warmth in the darkness. Kel watched her sleep, touched the symbol over his heart, remembered the cold, chose again the warmth. Outside, stars blazed cold and distant. But on Varthal, in the Academy of Living Fire, hundreds of beings had learned a simple truth. Cold was the default. Warmth was the choice, and every day they chose again. The end humanity. Fuck yeah. In the end, Varthal didn't teach us about war or aliens or doctrine. It taught us a quieter truth, that warmth is never an accident. It is a decision made again and again, especially when the cold would be easier. Maybe that's the only real strength any species ever has, the stubborn insistence on choosing each other over the void. So now the question shifts to you. If someone shattered everything you believed about strength, would you have the courage to rebuild yourself from the inside out? If warmth demanded more sacrifice than the cold, which direction would you lean? And when you look at the people around you, your own camp, are you the one who brings fire, or the one waiting for someone else to strike the spark? If you reached this point of the story, bless your emotional stamina. Type warmth in the comments so I know you carried the fire with us. Tell me where in the world you're watching from. Earth is big, but this channel is basically the Academy of Living Fire with better lighting. Hit subscribe if you want to be part of this strange interstellar community that cries, laughs, and dismantles empires with emotional damage and improvised generators. Like, hype, share this video with someone who might need a reminder that cold is optional. And don't forget to click the next video appearing on your screen. Your journey through the cosmos of feelings continues there.